up to the 30, the 20, 10, 5, Torrey Horton back to the end zone.
48-yard play. Guess who? Body up the middle, making another move to the outside. 15, 10, end zone again.
Keeps it. Nice move by Brown. He's got space. He's got 6. 35-yard touchdown for Byron Brown. A record-setting night for the South Florida quarterback.
Down so far, a little bit of a high snap. Genty right up the middle. Genty has room. Ashton Genty, give him 6.
Second and long. Lagar tries to pin it in. Rotos, it does. Rotos stays up. The Suns offense 4-3 wheels. Incredible effort for Rotos.
The G5 Hive. All G5, all the time.
Welcome to the G5 Hive Live, and we are excited to bring you another G5 college football coverage you love each and every week. I am Luke Probasco, and I'm joined by my co-host, Justice. We got a new song. We got some gear here. I got a new camera. Merchandise store will be available soon. If you're watching us on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. If you're watching us on X, please give us a follow, a like, and a retweet. And if you're listening to us in podcast form, please rate and review. You're going to want to check out that intro, that new song that we got. And again, you're going to want to check out the merchandise, and that will be coming soon to you if you would like it. Justice, how's it going?
Going great, man. I'm pretty hyped, man. I love the song. I love the we've done a lot of graphics work this year. So hopefully everyone enjoys it. Hope folks enjoy the song, enjoyed the little video that play with it featuring our players of the week this week. Like you said, merchandise store coming up soon. We got Luke and I ordered some hats. These hats won't be available on the merchandise store, but other great merchandise will be available. So yeah, man, exciting things, exciting stuff coming, and just looking forward to talking some college football, man. So now we're going to move on to the pure fantasy portion of our college fantasy portion of our show, and that's the waiver wire honey. And this week, first up is the quarterbacks. And I want to. There's a couple of names I feel like, or 3 names that I kind of want to like highlight. These are the premier guys available in your league. Blake Horvath, which was Luke's player of the week. He has put up 2 phenomenal weeks, 63 points against Memphis this week, 38 points against Temple the previous week, 7 rushing touchdowns, 3 passing touchdowns in the last 2 weeks. He's putting up numbers. He's not just doing it rushing. He's doing some passing as well. Obviously, most of his damage is coming with his legs, but man, Blake Horvath should be a hot addition on the waiver wire this week. The next guy, I'm not going to say too much because, Luke waxed poetic about him on the 2020 list, and that's San Jose State Emmett Brown. He is only 15% owned. He is a 2020 guy. He was the number 1 2020 guy for quarterbacks, and so enough said on Emmett Brown. He should not be 15% owned. And then the third guy I kind of feel like kind of an elite option who just had a monster week this week. Alonzo Barnett III, James Madison, only 9% owned. He put up 70 points against 70-plus points this week against North Carolina. He is a dual threat, and he is going to – I'm willing to bet that we're not going to be talking about Alonzo Barnett on this show next week. He's going to go above that 30% threshold. If you miss out on those top 3 guys, then the rest of these guys are certainly good plays. Tyler Huff quietly has been putting up some pretty good numbers there for Jacksonville State. He is only 7% owned. He's put up 25, 28, and 24 points in the last 3 games. He is also a dual threat. Certainly looks like he's kind of earned that job to lead that Jacksonville State offense as someone that can be pretty productive for you. And then the last guy on this particular slide, I'm not going to say too much about him because he's also a 2020 guy, and that's Christian Veillere, from Georgia State. All right, moving on to the rest of the quarterbacks here. Mikey Keene, Fresno State, only 25% owned. Just kind of a solid floor guy, right? He's not generally going to get you, 30 plus points a week, but he's probably going to get you 20 to 22 points a week. Really good floor there for Mikey Keene. Next up, JC French, Georgia Southern, 26% owned. He is in a good offense that is now off to Sun Belt play. Looking for a big week this week in that big rivalry game for JC French against Georgia State. Both of those quarterbacks featured in our waiver wire this week. Next up, Brendan Lewis, Nevada, only 22% owned. He is a dual threat. He has a good floor, and you know what? Now we're into conference play. We shouldn't see too many more really tough matchups for Lewis, and so look for Lewis to kind of, if you need some help, you can do a lot worse than Brendan Lewis. Dual threat, getting you that 20 to 22 points per game. Next up, another Service Academy quarterback, another triple option guy, Bryson Daly, Army, 6% owned. He's averaging 27.8 points. He has 5 rushing touchdowns and 340 yards rushing in the last 3 games. Certainly getting it done with his legs for his fantasy owners. And then rounding out our quarterbacks is Matt Sluka, UNLV, 26% owned. He's a dual threat, but he's really, like Luke alluded to earlier, much more of a rushing threat. We haven't really seen him have a super big game yet, but maybe that's to come. The last 3 weeks, he's put up 19, 31, and 14 points. So again, another solid floor guy with some rushing upside if you need that for your fantasy teams. Now we're going to go over to the running backs and Luke.
All right. Now, first of all, we got 84 of you watching us on X. Want some more likes and retweets. Ben, Brett, Robbie, Hollywood, thank you for the likes. Thank you for any retweets. Appreciate it. Let's get into the running backs. We've got running backs and wide receiver Cam Thomas. Again, if you're in PPR, getting you some receptions. He is at University of Texas, El Paso, UTEP, 13% owned. He eats in that passing game, getting 5 to 8 receptions per game and 70 to 90 yards per game. Granted, he only had 46 yards against Colorado State this week on a bye this week, but a name to know. I am tempering my expectations with UTEP, just not hitting on all cylinders, kind of like I thought they would this year. I mean, I wasn't expecting great things, but I did expect a little bit better. But Cam Thomas, a name to know. Rasul Faison, Utah State, 8% owned. He's in that 2020 group, guys. He's getting 18 touches per game and 101 yards per game. A guy that I feel like you can grab off the waivers and use if needed. You got Rajay Harris, East Carolina, 15% owned, 13.4 points per game, averaging 20.3 touches per game. I mean, it's been a slight decrease the last couple weeks, but again, a name to know nonetheless. Then we've got George Pettaway, JMU, 16%. I mentioned Ayo Adeyi, been hurt. His attempts go 8, 10, 16. He's getting 2 targets, 5 targets, and 2 targets, and he's had anywhere between 90 and 120 yards of the last 2 games. Freddie Brock, Georgia State, 16%. He's 22nd in the G5 with touches per game with 14 and 23rd in the G5 in yards per game with 76. If you need a guy, Freddie Brock is a name to know. Running back, Seth McGowan, New Mexico State, 19%. Justice, you want to hit the slide. Getting 11 to 15 carries a week, 50 to 90 yards. He looks like the most productive running back for New Mexico State, 12.9 points per game currently. Running back Jalen John, UMass, 2%. Not super productive, but still the lead back for UMass and has some involvement in the passing game, 11.1 points per game. Put Floyd Chalk San Jose on there, 23%. He's getting 12 touches, 64 yards per game. All I can say is getting scoring opportunities. I mean, granted, they're mostly passing it when they're down there, but hey, they're putting up a large number, and he's giving you an opportunity. That's all you can ask sometimes. Floyd Chalk, 23% owned. He was a lot more owned. People dropped him. It's like, I don't know when to start Floyd Chalk, but he's had 2 touchdowns last week. Then you've got how do you say Eli's last name?
Heidenreich.
Eli Heidenreich, Navy, 15% owned, 21.6 points per game. He's got 4 receptions in the last 3 games and a touchdown in each game of the season. His fantasy point totals the last 3 weeks, 24.1, 19.8, 20.9. I mean, dare I say you want Service Academy guys?
I think the thing that's scary with Eli, right, is he's not getting a lot of volume, right? But he is super productive, man. Like, obviously,
if you're looking for a running back, I mean, getting a chance.
Absolutely. And like, obviously, you'd much rather have him in the best ball league where you don't have to pick when to start him because of that lack of volume. But man, like, running backs in all leagues, just like, I don't care if you're playing the NFL, college, it doesn't matter. Running back is very thin. And so, a lot of these guys, like, you can say, well, Jalen John, for instance, right? Like, you're like, what am I going to do with a Jalen John? Well, you might be desperate for a running back one week, and he can be a bye week fill-in. And so we're not telling you to go drop Ashton Jeanty and add Jalen John. We're just trying to give you guys some options because running backs, I know in my leagues, I don't know about you, Luke, but running backs are super, super thin. And like, they are getting scooped up pretty much every single week. And so, most of these guys are rostered in my leagues. And so, Jalen John might not be, but these are the kind of guys, that Luke and I are looking at when we are making decisions. And so just trying to help you guys out with some running back selections just because the position is just so scarce.
And I don't think we mentioned it before, but we're looking at guys who are owned in 30% or less in leagues. So widely available in many leagues.
All right, let's move over to the wide receivers. And we got Dante Wright at Temple. He's a 2020 guy, so I don't want to say too much, but 26% owned, over 20 points the last 3 weeks. And, Temple's probably going to always give him a good game script where they're going to be throwing the ball around a lot. They're going to be generally playing from behind. And so a good game script for the wide receiver 1 for Temple. Next is Ted Hurst. Only 4% owned. He was Luke's player of the week last week. I guess maybe because he was on a bye, his ownership didn't go up too much this past week. But the last 2 weeks, he has 31 points and 20 points. So look for big things from Ted Hurst this week against Georgia Southern in that rivalry game. Next up, another guy I'm not going to spend too much time on. He is a 2020 guy, Cade McDonald, Miami, Ohio, 25% owned. Brett Gabbert's number 1 target. Should absolutely be owned in leagues. Junior Vanderross at Toledo, 13% owned. He's averaging 16 points per game. He is a good floor option if you're looking for someone to kind of be steady for you. Wide receiver, Elijah Metcalf. Marshall has really kind of come on strong here the last 2 weeks. Only 15% owned. He put up 20 points this week against Ohio State. So, look for him to kind of get going here as they enter conference play. Coleman Owen is another guy that's a 2020 guy, so not going to spend too much time on him. 17% owned. Orrin Singleton, Eastern Michigan, 3% owned. The last 2 weeks, he's been a target hog with 11 and 10 targets. Only 3% owned, so available in most leagues. Next up, Cam Shanks at UAB, only 3% owned, 13.9 points a week. He has a good floor for you if you are in a PPR league. And then these
or if
last
anybody
two,
with any return yards, he gets you some good return yards too.
Absolutely. Dean Patterson, Florida International. He's kind of been warming up the last 2 weeks. He's got 25 points and 16 points the last 2 weeks, only 1% owned. Kind of interested to see if he can, kind of grow into that wide receiver one role that we kind of expected there for the Panthers, the wide receiver one for Keon Jenkins. And then this next one kind of surprises me because this dude's put up some pretty good points, and he's getting ready to start conference play, and that's Adrian Norton from Akron. Only 2% owned. He's put up 14-plus points in the last 3 weeks, and Maction getting ready to start. Sign me up for some Adrian Norton. Moving on to the receivers, to the tight ends, and back to Luke.
All right, so we've got some names that I don't have pictures of here, but they're in the 2020 group, and they're available in a large amount of leagues. So this is our podcast. We can do whatever we want. We said it's going to be 30% or
they're slightly above that 30% threshold.
We got Tanner Kozoil, Ball State, 34% owned, 17.7 points per game. He's got targets of 7, 8, 11 the last 3 weeks. He had 26.2 points for Central Michigan. Grayson Barnes, Northern Illinois, 31% owned. He's averaging 10 points per game. Dorian Fleming, Georgia State, 12% owned, 11.5 points per game. Targets the last 3 have been 5, 6, and 9. So, again, those guys are in our 2020 group, and they're available on your waivers. Grayson Barnes, Tanner Kozoil. I broke, the rule of less than 30, but they could be out on your waivers. Now let's get to the guys who are definitely under that 30%. You got Jackson Cannon, San Jose State, 2% owned, 4.5 targets, 2 receptions per game. Why are we bringing up Jackson? Well, his 32 yards per game, he's got an 8 out of 10.6. With how much San Jose tosses it around, granted, he's only getting 4.5 targets, only those 2 receptions, but hey, he could lock into a touchdown. Sometimes that's all you're looking for.
The problem with Jackson is he's on or off. He's like 1 week he's not doing anything, the next week he's getting a lot of targets, the next week he's not doing anything, and then he gets a lot of targets again. He's not super consistent, not yet anyway.
You got Colin Weber, who's been consistent until this last week. Again, they were on their third string quarterback, so that could play into it. He's at Charlotte, 3% owned. Again, on their third string quarterback. He had a 0 burger last week, but he's averaging still 5 targets, 3 receptions, and 35 yards with a 0 burger last week. Eli Wilson, App State, 16%. He's just a steady performer, gets you about 4 targets, 30 yards. He only had 1 target last week. App State just played like booty, but he's getting you 4 targets, 30 yards. Maybe can look into a touchdown. And then this is probably the guy that we need to know about. Justice, you're a big fan. Anthony Torres.
I'm a big fan of Anthony Torres, yeah.
6% owned. He scored a touchdown in 3 of 4 weeks. He leads the G5 in touchdowns with the tight ends with 4. If you're looking for something, I know touchdowns aren't sticky, but hey, Anthony Torres, a great name to pick up on waivers.
I'm probably 4% of that 6%. he was someone I was high on the preseason, and especially if I waited on tight ends in drafts, Anthony Torres was someone that was on my list to pick to draft. So I own a lot of Anthony Torres.
All right. And then to round it out, Jacob Newell, Akron, 1% owned. He's averaging 4.7 targets and 31 yards. So a pretty good number there. And that's going to wrap it up for our tight ends and our waiver wire. Come back and join us next week as we discuss what happened in week 4 or what happened in week 5, as well as we look forward to week 6 of the 2024 season. And as always, bring you up to date on all the latest news and the happenings in the world of G5 college football. If you're watching us on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. And if you're watching us on X, give us a retweet, a like, a follow. And if you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please subscribe and leave those 5-star ratings and review. Thank you all for your support. Until the next time, we are the G5 Hive.